Wondering Souls. Welcome to my channel. This is Elizabeth, and today I'm going to be talking about Satya, the truth. So, I've mentioned this before in other videos, but one way that I envision God is that God is the ultimate reality. And for me, that means God is the truth, right? So there's lots to be said about the truth in many of the world's spiritual traditions, but I wanted to share a couple of things that I pulled from different sources. So Yoga Sutra 2.36, this is from Patanjali, says, when established in Satya, the intended effects of one's actions come to pass. So Satya is one of the niyamas. It's one of the observances that we're supposed to respect as yogis. And so in this verse, Patanjali is talking about that. And basically what he's saying is that if what you're doing is truthful, then you become one with the action and your intentions come true. So you kind of become rewarded by being truthful and aligning your thoughts and words and actions all towards the same aim. And then in the Mudaka Upanishad, verse 3.1.6, it says, truth ultimately triumphs, not falsehood. So I really like that one. And then there's a lot in the Bible about truthfulness versus lies, but one verse that stood out to me is Proverbs 12:22, where it says, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who deal truthfully are his delight. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can discern the truth. I have this little chakra guy up here, and I'm highlighting the third eye, Ajna chakra, as well as the throat chakra, Vishuddha, because to me there's like the Satya kind of interacts a lot with those two chakras, because we have to understand the truth and speak the truth if we're going to observe Satya in our life. So how do we discern the truth? That's where I'm thinking about Ajna. That Ajna is our command center. So that's where we make decisions, where we receive information. So there's a lot of misinformation out there in the world, right? And it's getting crazier and crazier every day. But I came across this little course online, and if it's still there, it hasn't been chainsawed, I will put the link in the description box below. But it's a free course by MIT Open Learning Library called Sorting Fact from Fiction, Civic Reasoning. And this course is really geared more towards like educators who can provide this content to their students. But I watched it just as, a regular, person, and I got a couple of good takeaways from it. So basically the point is to teach you how to research like a fact checker. So it's important when you're coming across any sort of information to consider who's the source of this information, what's their credibility, what kind of biases might they have, what is their evidence, and are there any other sources to either debunk this or to support it. And they had a couple of good tips, sort of like an updated modern version of fact checking, because I remember back in elementary school things were different, but they kind of have a more modern version of it nowadays. So when you're online, you need to do click restraint for the first of all. So when you search for something on Google, don't even read the AI thing if you can help it. Try to skip over the AI. Go scroll on down, go through all the search results until you find one that seems relevant, that seems like it's coming from a credible source. Although now that a lot of the major media corporations have capitulated to right-wing media, right-wing, rich and powerful right-wing figures. Like, yeah, you got to be more careful than ever. But find a resource that seems unbiased. That if it's a news organization, they need to have an ombudsman who does their own fact checking, who corrects things when they figure out that they're wrong. And click on a source like that rather than just the first thing that pops up. Don't just take the AI response at its word. Definitely, okay? I've got stories about that. But anyway, so click restraint's really important. And then once you read about this information, it's important to do lateral reading. So lateral reading is where we check to see what other sources have to say. So for one thing, you'll open a new browser tab on your laptop or whatever and search for any third-party critiques of the organization that published the information in the first place, right? To see what other people are saying about that organization or that author, and because other people might expose certain biases that the website you originally looked at isn't going to explain, right? So that's important for evaluating the credibility of your sources. And also when they provide their evidence, you need to see like where did that evidence come from. Hopefully there's a bibliography that has that information. And can that evidence be supported by other sources as well, or did they just make it up? You got to double check. And so those are the two main things you need to be doing on the internet to kind of make sure that you're double checking the information. And so, yeah, we need to combat false claims, use that sword of truth and discernment when we're considering the information that we're being presented with. And then when it comes to speaking the truth, well, I wanted to talk about the 3 filters. So there's this maxim that before we say something, we should pass it through 3 filters. First filter, is it true? Have you done all this? Do you know that it's true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? And if it makes it through all 3 filters, then it's a good speech. Then it's something that, it's okay to say. Otherwise, it's probably best to keep your mouth shut. And, I know I struggle with some of these filters sometimes. Sometimes I make it through 2 filters, but not 3, Sometimes I don't make it through any of the filters, but it's something for us all to strive for. It's really important. And so as I was putting this little poster together, I started trying to do this to figure out who originally told us about the 3 filters, because I wanted to cite my source. And so when I first Googled the 3 filters, all these search results popped up saying that Socrates said that, right? So then I started going through this process with the click restraint and the lateral reading. And when I did the lateral reading, I found some other sources that said, no, there's no evidence that Socrates ever said that. Socrates never even wrote anything down, and Plato didn't write this down. Plato wrote down all the stuff that Socrates supposedly said or whatever. He's the one who passed on the teachings of Socrates, and he never said anything about this or about Socrates saying it. So there's all these sources that popped up that said Socrates came up with this, but that's not true. It's ironic because the very first filter is it true? So then I started doing more digging, and some people said it was Buddha, some people said it was Confucius who said it, and then some people said it was this lady, oh my gosh, I forgot her name. I want to say Cartwright, or I'm sorry, I can't remember what her name was, but she was this missionary to India back in the early 20th century, and she wrote a prayer book or like a little book of daily devotionals, and this was something that she said. But then I kept digging even farther than that, and I think that the original source that I came up with was from Lady Mary or Not of the World, a book by Charles Toppler. But even then, there were even earlier sources from like the children's, what was it called? The Children's New Church magazine. It was one of, I forgot which one of those was older, but so basically when you look back at the oldest written source that we have, it really sounds like this was more of just an oral maxim before that even came along. So it's just always good to keep in mind that not everything you see on the internet is true, y'all. And another good thing is, like, whenever you're evaluating information, to think about whether the tone that's being presented with, is it sensational? Is it all caps? Are they trying to get you to hook on your emotions? Or is it coming from a more calm place? Do they have a bibliography? If you follow up on that bibliography, what do you find? What else? There's something else I was going to say. Well, I don't know, pass me by now. But another thing I was going to say too is that when it comes to Satya, the truth, there's also different ways of looking at the truth, right? There's fact and then there's myth, right? So, you know, facts are the cold, hard truth. And I kind of think of facts, I always picture the sun when I think of fact, because, you know, the sun shines its light on everything. It leaves everything exposed that it touches. It's impossible to deny what you see in the light of the sun, but it can also be very harsh sometimes and sort of hard to digest or assimilate, right? Especially if you're reading like a heavy-duty academic text or something. Like, those can be kind of hard to get used to, especially depending on how verbose and eloquent the author might be. So, you know, sometimes the sun and the facts are just kind of hard to digest. So that's where myth is helpful, you know. So I think of myth like the moon. The moon is the reflection of the sun, and it makes the sun's light a little less harsh. It shines some light, but it's a little cooler, a little more, a little easier to digest, right? And it puts things into a story form that's easier for us to understand on like a lower level, you know, like a more, maybe not a lower level, but like on a different level. So I don't want to like say that, you know, we need to just ignore anything that's not a cold hard fact and just dismiss myth altogether, because there is an important role that myth plays in our life, myths and storytelling. But it is important for us to differentiate when we're talking about a cold hard fact versus a myth or an opinion, you know. So I just want to put that out there, guys. The truth is really important and we need to be committed to it. Thanks.